full of kind of choice worthies and high hegians from a range of different forms of public life. I just don't like that move in politics at all. And it's very common, isn't it? I mean,
it is. And going back to the media thing, the way these commissions are portrayed in the media is something that concerns me. Like, they had the thing about education during the week, where it was the Reform Scotland Education Commission came out, and they had a Newsnight programme on it. I think it was on Thursday night they had the Newsnight programme. And the way they presented this commission was as if it was some kind of independent government-funded body, which I don't think is true at all.
Okay, this thing is it's funded by 57 participating states, the states from Europe, Central Asia, and North America. It's a security organisation and is interested in human rights, national minorities, democratisation, policing strategies, counter-terrorism, and economic and environmental activities. So there you go.
And is the UK one of the funding states?
Yes, it is.
Ah, well, there we go.
Yeah,
if we're funding it, why don't we use it?
I just might as well get our money's worth. That seems like a generally sensible proposition. All right, well, maybe that might be a nice point to move on to our fourth topic, which was something I wanted to ask both of you about. Obviously, the past few months have been alive with talk about the Chris Hoon and Vicky Price trial around their speeding transfers and all that. And both of them have now been convicted, and on Monday they're due to be sentenced. And I don't want to ask you about the specific case or what you think should happen to them, but I wanted to ask a more general question, really, which is, should people in the public eye who get entangled with our criminal justice system expect to be treated, or should they be treated, more harshly than Joe Bloggs, who is convicted of essentially the same offence? Among my friends, we've been having a lively debate about that this week, so I wondered what you two thought about it. Maybe I'll start with you, Michael.
I don't think more harshly. I certainly think they should be treated equally and not leniently. I mean, there are certain cases where people get let off very lightly, like someone like Jeffrey Archer. I don't think has been treated more harshly than someone else would in his situation. I think very often they're actually treated more leniently, and I think that's disgraceful, actually. I think equal before the law, everyone, it should be the simple principle. In terms of, okay, not necessarily when it's before the court, but in terms of one of the things we've lost, or one of the things the United Kingdom lost in its government, that used to be a good tradition is, something goes wrong in the department and the guy has to resign. But now, not even if something goes wrong in their apartment, if they get caught themselves, they still don't resign. Or if they resign, they come back sort of 3 months later in another job. And I think this kind of sense of departmental responsibility has been a big loss in public life. But I think equal before the law for the question about when these people go to court, certainly.
What do you think, Lynda? What's your immediate feeling?
Immediate feeling, I would probably agree with Michael that you would want to see everybody treated equally. The only thing I think is, if these people are up there involved in government, should we possibly, if they are lording it over the rest of us, should we possibly expect higher standards from them? Not sure.
Because it was an argument, because we've had a few politicians prosecuted, not just for things they've done in office, it must be said. We had, do you remember Lord Watson, who was the willful fire raiser in Prestonfield House Hotel, who was an MSP, and he went to prison, and he appealed his case, and essentially, as I remember, the High Court said, well, public figure, you got a very stiff sentence, but tough. If you're going to provoke the criminal justice system, as arguably anyone would do who's either committed perjury, a la Tommy Sheridan, or the Chris Hoon conviction, then surely you have to expect that a criminal justice system, which is arguably an awful lot about the appearance of the prosecution of crime and sending messages more than it is about the systematic prosecution of everybody that could be prosecuted, that actually people in that situation should be dealt with more harshly, because it is one of the things which keeps the kind of noble lie of criminal justice on the road. Nobody provokes me with impunity is the motto of the Scottish Crown, and arguably, I would say politicians who provoke the criminal justice system should expect to be treated pretty harshly.
So what would you have done to Hume?
I I am not answering that question. I'm sure we shall see. We shall see.
Couldn't resist it. It was an open goal then.
It's just because most of the folk that take the view that Lynda and Michael you've expressed tend to say that actually it must be wrong. Surely we have to have equality before the law. But the thing is, though, that it's quite a common practice. I would have thought for folk to take speeding points on behalf of their spouses, where there isn't much evidence about who did it, and you don't have this sort of subsequent political fallout and personal fallout that characterised the sort of Chris Hoon and Vicky Price situation. So arguably, the ordinary punter who does this probably will get away with it, probably will never see the inside of court, probably will never be accused of crimes of dishonesty. So I just wonder about that when we use this kind of argument about equality before the law and universal treatment, what we often mean is that those small selection of people who end up in court should be treated in the same way, while many of the people who did exactly the same thing in the real world should get off with it. That's a maybe slightly provocative thing to say, but I don't know, we were discussing that in the context as well last week about the football bill. That actually picking a single person out of a crowd and prosecuting them doesn't seem very fair, but actually that is what the criminal justice system, unless you kill someone, basically, is mostly about,
Taking one and making an example of.
Essentially, arguably, when you look at the gap between reported crimes that people experience, crimes that are reported to the police, the number shrinks again. Crimes that the police report and charge to the Procurator Fiscal, the number shrinks again. The number of cases brought in court by the Procurator Fiscal, the number shrinks again. It's not just a feature of sexual offences, it's a feature of most offences which happen in society.
It's quite an unsettling thought, actually.
I think it is. I think it is because it undercuts one of this kind of cherished sort of images we have about how criminal justice works. Though equally, I think it's one of these areas where we're just not realistic about resources. I mean, if you're not gonna maintain a kind of law and order state, the sort of full-scale zero tolerance to all offences, then you really have to pay through the nose in order to do it, and commit vast levels of surveillance on your population. And I don't think that's particularly attractive either. So I don't know.
There's the Chris Hoon thing. I mean, had it not been that he'd fallen out with his wife, would that ever come to light? Would people who have been doing kind of things, accepting points for their spouse, as long as the two of them keep quiet, how are you ever going to find out about it?
No, exactly. I mean, and there's good reasons. It's not just the failure of the organised criminal justice system to prosecute these things, but obviously, things that go on in people's houses often just never reach the attention of the police and the authorities, and if you keep quiet about it, then you get away with it. Maybe it's a good thing. Maybe there's a degree to which our laws should have this kind of latitude in practice, and it's not a dreadful thing. I don't know. It's something which I've talked about in the context of this corroboration reform. I don't know if Lynda, you and Michael have followed it in any detail, but the proposals from Kenny McCaskill to eliminate the corroboration rule for criminal trials in Scotland is prompting quite a lot of controversy. But one of the things I worry about it most is that actually the illusion that it will lead to lots of more cases reaching up in court is very unlikely to be borne through in practice, because courts, the police, prosecutors just don't have the resources significantly to extend the number of cases they're prosecuting already.
I've not been following it that closely. I mean, I've seen the things you've written about it, and I've read a couple of things as well. I've seen lawyers protesting outside courts as well.
Yeah, that's about legal aid as well, because that's another area of intense controversy at the moment about levels of legal aid and the introduction of fees for people to pay for their own defence, essentially, from the SNP. But legal aid budgets are being squeezed all over Europe. But it's quite controversial anyway. Yeah, I just wonder, I think there's a degree to which we have to get a bit real about our criminal justice system and be aware about what it can do and what it does do, and the gap that might separate that from our political rhetoric about it.
The corroboration thing kind of worries me. It seems to me that they want to get rid of it to get more cases in court, but I worry about the quality of the cases if you take the corroboration away. And surely the quality of our decisions is more important than the quantity.
Yeah, I think that would be true, but actually I'm not sure that is an argument which helps defend the corroboration rule, because lawyers will say, well, it's really important we keep this because otherwise there'll be increased miscarriages of justice, because we could get convicted on the voice of a single witness, and I think that's a reasonable thing to be concerned about. But the thing is, the corroboration rule isn't qualitative. It isn't it's quantitative. It isn't qualitative. It's about the number of pieces of evidence, not the quality of those pieces of evidence. So if you have one witness that says, "I saw Michael assault that cat," then actually all you need to do is produce a slightly injured cat, and there's Michael up for corroboration. But fundamentally, the entire case turns on the evidence of a witness already. So I think there's a degree to which we maybe overstate the kind of qualitative impact of the corroboration rule, personally. But
I think the cat's evidence would be key.
He hit me, my lord. Exactly, the usual.
Don't tell Blair Jenkins, or he'll never speak to you again, Mike.
Yeah.
Oh, what do we think about that? And I'm going to be horrid here as a cantankerous, prematurely middle-aged, sour-faced misery. But I find the idea of sending pictures of cats around as the kind of form of advocacy for independence to be pretty much like drawing one's nails across a blackboard. I just find the sort of cutesy horror of it deeply, deeply dismal and cloying. I don't know if that's just me being deeply, deeply acid and unpleasant, and whether you're happier to have memes of kittens making a substantial part of the argument for independence. Michael, you're a cat lover. What's your feeling?
I thought it was retchingly awful. I think.
Don't hold back.
I think about it's okay. I won't hold back. It's about as useful as Anne Frank's drum kit.
Oh, that's bleak. That is very bleak. I don't know if you saw this, Lynda.
I received the email, and it was sent out wishing me a happy International Women's Day, and then giving me a cute little kitten at the end of it. It was appalling. Who decided that whose idea this was? Who in Yes Scotland thought that was a good idea? I mean, come on.
I suppose being a bit fairer, like if it grabs them a couple of votes, then fine. But I mean, really, is this the level we need to be working on? I don't know.
The most important decision our country's facing, and we are putting cute little cats on it. It was just appalling. It was breathtaking.
And does it reflect, does it emblematise something that I know some folk have been arguing about Yes Scotland, that it's all a bit lacking in fierceness. It needs a bit of steel, a bit of pointedness, a bit of serious-mindedness. It doesn't need kittens and Blair mail. I must say, I tend to agree that it just sort of, I don't know, it just makes your heart sink. That is this the best we can do? Because I just can't see that it can be. Even if you're kind of going to be generous and think that it's fine for a bit of frivolity. I like a bit of frivolity. But if I ever get sent a kitten again, God help me, it may convince me to vote for the Union after all.
I like my frivolity to be quality frivolity as well.
That's an excellent motto. I may live my life by that motto in future.
Speaking of that, speaking of more frivolous things, you've got me started on Borgen, finally. I watched the first two, and my first impression is that I'm struck by how much Bent looks like Slavoj Žižek. Do you think it's him?
I think that the only difference is that Slavoj has, in addition to his pronounced lisp, has a rather kind of greater fleshy mass dangling under his beard, whereas Bent Syro is more of the kind of Danish, neat little creature, isn't he?
But also, I'm not letting up. You've got to... It's a deal, because I'm watching this, so you've got to watch Breaking Bad. Breaking.
You're not actually the only person to commend that to me. I will when my thesis lets me free myself from the shackles of despair. I will crack open Breaking Bad.
It will give you the worst case in history of one. What was it? Someone called it on the internet last week. One more episoditis.
Oh well.
It's one of those.
That'll be handy.
Lynda, Borgen or Breaking Bad, or both?
Neither. I have to say, as a mother of two kids who are out every night at music lessons and skiing lessons and God knows what, I don't actually watch an awful lot of television. And I must be the only person in the world who has never seen Borgen.
I think that must not be true. I imagine it's a nice example actually of the sort of Scottish bourgeois echo chamber, that in the sense, just like everybody who comments on Scottish politics probably has read what's going on in the pages of the Scotsman, everyone has also probably watched at least one episode of Borgen.
Yeah, well, in keeping with Yes Scotland, I'll try and do a summation of the first few episodes with cats.
Well, I'm sure we'll all be deeply grateful for that, and we'll hold out for that fascinating series. Okay, well maybe that's a nice moment there to close episode number 17. Is it 17, Michael?
Yes, it is.
It is episode excellent. Well, it's an excellent moment to draw to a close. Episode number 17 of the For All That podcast. We'll be back to our usual times of the Scottish Independence podcasts coming out on Wednesday. Michael, who's on this week?
No comment.
No comment. Okay, no wee preview.